I would like to thank the organizers at the outset for this opportunity. I'll be making a case for the use of business simulation games as tools for education. So I'll be making a case for the use of business simulation games as tools for education. We at ICFAI have been using simulation games and case studies for all our learners. This includes our undergrad students, which is BBA. We do this for the MBA students. We also do it for executive education. And this ties in very well with our keynote speaker's address, where he said interdisciplinarity is a must, because what we have observed is all the problems that we face, all the business problems that we have are interdisciplinary. Nothing comes from one function, right? Nothing is a marketing problem or an HR problem. It is a combination of things. So let's go to the agenda. So as we teachers do, we start from the definition. That's where I will start. And I will go on to cite 4 examples. One is Erp Sim. It's a simulation game developed by HEC Montreal. Then I will talk about the pricing game, which is developed by MIT. Third is the Coffee Shop Inc. simulation game developed by Harvard. And the last one, the entrepreneurship game developed by Wharton. So these are the who's who of higher education who have developed these simulation games. As promised, this is the definition. Now, what are the words in this definition that jump out at you? Demonstrative, activity, a combination of theory and practice, involvement, developing skills and knowledge. So we need all this inculcated in students who go on to the corporate world and they want to work in that area, or even if they want to become an entrepreneur, they need to have all these things. And to make it interesting, it's always an inductive approach that works best. You start with an example, and through that example, get them involved, and then go on to explain the concepts. So that's what all these simulation games do. And these words also point to 2 things. This should be fun and learn. So learning without fun is also boring, so it should be fun and learn. Now, just going through and participating in a simulation game or a case study is not enough. We also need to evaluate, right? We also need to evaluate as to, did it result in some learning for the participants? Because if there is no learning, it's only fun, they remember the example and forget what they learned from that, what concepts they learned from it, it is useless. So we'll get that in a bit, we'll get to that. So let me first go to the first example, which is Erp Sim. Now, higher education teaching is expected to ensure students' fitness for work immediately after their final degree. So we are talking about skilling students, so that's an imperative. Erp Sim helps in improving the handling of the SAP ERP system and the execution of managerial tasks. As a special feature, Erp Sim fosters methodological management competencies. As a special feature, it does that. The teamwork experience under real business conditions adds to students' social competencies, and students also learn to make decisions under time constraints. There's a time limit to what they do. If they exceed the time limit, they get negative points and they lose out. So in this simulation game, students have to play the role of an operating profit maximizing entrepreneur. The objective of any business is to maximize profit, and that is something which is demonstrated in this. The immediate profit effects of their management decisions are indicated after each simulation round. There are multiple rounds here. With profit maximizing as the only objective, students' decision performance can be clearly measured. So nobody can claim that I made the right decision if the profit is not there. If the profit is lesser than the competitor, then whatever he or she says, the objective has not been achieved. For this simulation game, 2 different types of companies are implemented in Erp Sim. The first one is a commercial company for beverages, and the second one is a manufacturing company for muesli products. So 2 different types of companies are there, so they get exposure to different types. Usually the simulation game is performed with competing groups of 4 to 6 students, so there is competition involved. Each group runs its own company, and the number of groups determines the amount of competition that is there in the field, which is a real-life scenario, right? Nobody is in the business on his or her own. There are other competitors in the market. So students have to operate in a dynamic and changing environment generated by real-time situations. They have to cope quickly with selected tasks concerning procurement processes, materials planning, pricing, and sales order management. So here you see different things that the participating teams have to focus on. They have to change the price list, they have to change bill of material, they need to have operations knowledge as well, they have to have the marketing knowledge, forecasting, some statistics knowledge is required, they have to think about advertising, branding, material resource planning, purchase orders, they have to convert the purchase orders, and they have to release production. And they also need to evaluate, apart from all this, at the end of it or after each round, they also have to evaluate the reports about sales orders, market reports, financial statements, production reports, costs and inventory reports. So if they don't do that, they won't win and they will not be able to maximize their profit. Now, one point that I made earlier was about evaluation. Okay, we have taught this simulation or we have covered this in the class, but what is the impact? So there are researchers who have worked on this particular ERP Sim simulation. So the references are there, Baranchik and Heriko. So what they did, they studied the knowledge of participants before teaching them the simulation and after teaching the simulation. So they did it on 3 heads. One was business process knowledge, second was technical knowledge for SAP ERP, and third is the ERP transaction knowledge. And as you can see, the score on a scale of 1 to 5, the average score before ERP Sim was 2.81 on business process knowledge, and it went up to 3.59. And you can see for all the 3, for technical knowledge, it went up from 1.75 to 3.44. And the third one, on ERP transaction knowledge, it went up from 1.59 to 3.47. So there's an immediate impact. Now this can be studied after maybe 6 months, after 2 years as well. How is their knowledge changed? Have they been sustaining that improvement in knowledge or not? So evaluation-wise also, they have an impact. So this slide proves that. Moving on, the next is the pricing game. So this is developed by MIT, and this is free for use for educators, and we can use it. So I have used that in the class. Now, this is interesting. This simulation games comes with a case study as well. So the case study is called Salt Cellar. So this is about the salt industry. So students or participants are supposed to read the case before they come for the simulation game and then play this particular game. So this starts with a description of the manufacturing process. It talks about the industry structure. We could teach concepts of game theory through this particular simulation game. So the dilemma the player faces is whether to continue with a standalone salt company. That is one. It also talks about how to pitch the salt business to investors. On one hand, the potential for tougher regulation against the use of salt in highway decision. Highway de-icing and the food industry was a potential threat as concerns grew about its effect on both the environmental and human health. So there are negative aspects to this salt industry. On the other hand, the positive aspects, salt remained a large and important market for which there were at present few substitutes. So all these things have to be considered before people make decisions or the participants make decisions. And this is also an interfunctional or cross-disciplinary business simulation game. And the kind of reports that you get after this are these. So this is a demonstration where there are 2 players in the market. So the prices, the revenue, shipments, market share, how the market share changes, how the net income changes, how the cumulative profit changes. So based on these results, in the second round, participants can make decisions on the price that they want to project, and net income and cumulative profit, and ultimately the winner is decided based on net income and cumulative profit. So this is the second case. Again, this demonstrates that there are multiple things involved, multiple subjects involved, multiple concepts involved. The third one is coffee shopping. In Coffee Shop Inc., the only thing that is to be demonstrated is this. Employee satisfaction leads to customer satisfaction, leads to sales and profits. So the participants have to make changes on these things so they can change the salaries of the employees vis-a-vis the competition. They can increase training expenditure. They can increase or decrease number of staff. That's one thing or one lever that they can change. So customer satisfaction drivers are employee satisfaction, which you can change. You can change the pricing as well. Then you can decide on having a variety or not. You can plan to have only one variety of the product, or you can have multiple varieties so that the customers don't go back if they don't find their favorite product. And the determinants of unit sales, you can make decisions on the location of the store, on the promotion strategy, opening hours. Do you want to keep the store open for the entire day, or do you want to keep it open only for 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening, or things like that? And the main cost items here are rent, salaries, raw materials, training, promotion, and admin and depreciation. So again, this is multiple subjects or multiple topics or multiple things that the participants have to take care of. And the last one is the entrepreneurship simulation, where there are 3 roles available for the participants. One is that of a founder, second is that of an investor, and third is that of a key employee. Participants can decide which particular role they want to play. And the concepts that are taught through this are different valuation approaches. Now, the interesting thing is this case starts with an email that the founder sends to the investor. So the communication itself, email communication itself could be a point of discussion. So ideally, we should have 3 or 4 teachers or 3 or 4 instructors in a classroom when this case is being run, so you can focus on 3 or 4 different aspects. So we can also teach valuation approaches through this particular simulation game, then equity versus salary compensation. Should the employees be given equity, or what percentage should be given as equity, and what should be the percentage of salary compensation? Then fundraising considerations, those things can be taught. Then there's an interesting concept it talks about is rich versus king. So do you want to be the king, you want to control everything, you don't want outside investors in your company, you can be the king. But on the other hand, if you want to be rich, if you want to expand, you would need outside investors. So that's a call the founder has to take. So those things can also be demonstrated or explained to this particular case. Then the idea of acquiring skilled employees, how much leeway you want to give to the employees, those things can also be explained through this particular simulation. Then on diversity, we can talk about low diversity is helpful when we are looking at something which is focused on exploiting existing areas, when you don't want a lot of innovation to be done. But if innovation is required, diversity also helps. So this idea can also be drilled down through this particular simulation game. So if the objective is only execution and routinization, we can look at low diversity, but mostly we need innovation, so we want to have high diversity. So to conclude, we have situations where we need interdisciplinary business simulation games and interdisciplinary case studies, and all of these demonstrate that they already have these aspects built into them. Then co-teaching is an important aspect where we can have people from different backgrounds as instructors and help the participants. These are engaging, no doubt about it, because when you are involved for 1.5 hours, 2 hours playing that game, there is no doubt about the engagement level, and it is activity-based, but the proof of the pudding is in eating, and we have eaten the pudding, and we have seen that students or participants gain after they participate in this business simulation games. Thank you. Thank you very much once again.